Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with our week's theme of genre fusion, exploring songs that mix two or more genre ideas together and make something interesting or fresh or new. Today we're going to look at Tigran Hamasyan. We've had him on the channel before. I'm pretty sure we're going to get something somewhere in the realm of jazz metal, since that's sort of what I expect from him. Let's dive into it. The song is called The Curse. Blood of an Innocent is Spilled. Beautiful light touches on the piano. The whistle layering against the piano melody is nice. Do I hear steel brushes on the snare? It's giving us a nice little white noise texture in the background. Cool melodic choices too. I'm kind of having a tough time placing it. There's neoclassical, but a little bit of something jazzy in there, and it dips into Phrygian as well, giving it a vague Middle Eastern vibe. It's sort of mixing all three of these harmonic choices together. I like the production on the whistling too. So we're alternating, well, we have a 15-beat phrase, basically. 4, 4, 4, and then 3. And the 3 always has a really interesting rhythm to it. That lead piano line staying off of the downbeats, making it feel even floatier than it is. Although I said piano, but it's some sort of synthesizer, keyboard. The piano layered underneath is creating something a little chaotic. Interesting here, we're kind of going into a spooky territory. Interesting note choices in the... Interesting note choices in the counterpoint on that last section. It increased the amount of harmonic instability compared to the first quarter of the track. Dude, have we been in 15 beat phrases this entire time? Interesting to hear those mathcore dyads, but not on, incredibly distorted guitars. Pulling us back to the intro, a stripped down version of this original melody. We have extra layers of compression on what I think is still steel brushes. Really interesting stinger work in these moments. Yeah, dude, still 15. That might be my favorite track from Hamasyan so far. Granted, I think this is only my third or fourth song that I've heard of his, but I'm pretty sure I've mentioned in the past that while I enjoy the technicality, I kind of get lost in the technicality as well. I have more of a difficult time engaging emotionally what's going on because it is just incredibly technical, almost to a fault of losing that emotive side. Although I also take the blame on some of that too. His music isn't typically something you can get on a first time through. There's density to it. There's complexity to it. So the fact that it kind of doesn't resonate emotionally with me on a first time listen is probably normal and says more about the complications of the song and the amount of information in it, as well as my inability to dig that deep down on a first listen. But this, I feel, is incredibly palatable, emotive. I think that it conveys what it's wanting to clearly on a first time. And this isn't necessarily through a lesser amount of complexity, although I do think that this is harmonically more straightforward than some of the other tracks I've heard from him. And I think that's where I want to start with this video. Harmony, chord progressions, atmosphere, emotion. This is a song that it doesn't necessarily stick with standard, conventional pop style chord progressions. And it also doesn't start or stick around too much with straightforward chords in general either. In fact, right off the bat, I had mentioned the harmonic complexity going on, that there is a jazziness to it. There's some spices in there that kind of take more traditional chords and swap out one or two notes in order to create something jazzy, spicy. more interesting. But there's also, I think, in some places, a hard lean into neoclassical sounds as well. And this is where most of the song sits, in this area of like a neoclassical jazzy idea. But it also sometimes dips its toe into more Phrygian tones as well, introducing a little bit of a vague Middle Eastern sound. I can't really pinpoint a specific area or type of music, but it does have that generic, I guess more of a Western pop culture sound of what Middle Eastern music sounds like kind of idea. And it's interesting because it works so well within that neoclassical jazz combo. It's a song that, to me at least, ends up feeling at the beginning very mysterious because it is amorphous, constantly in flux, dancing between all of these different sounds and emotions, never really leading me towards any specific point. Maybe a single bar will make me think it's going in this direction, and then it'll start stretching out in this direction over here. So I follow that one, and actually we're going in this way. And it just creates something that is dense, complex, but ultimately for me a bit mysterious. I think part of that is the chordal choices themselves. There is a general darkness to a lot of this song. But I think that the ways that the chords progress, not following typical functional harmony, primarily because of the chord choices at play, not necessarily because there is an intentional disregard for functional theory, but simply because the sounds that want to be in play here kind of cancel out some of the functional elements of moving from this classical chord to this one, because we wanted to toss a little bit of Phrygian in here. So it doesn't feel quite as normal, while there is still some sort of progression throughout. None of this song feels like it's lost or meandering. There's always a directionality to the harmonic writing. It's just not the normal chords that I would hear in these roles. And I find that to be interesting because it falls in line of what I think this song does really well overall, which is palatable complexity. I could not name the chords that are in play here. I would need to listen to it quite a few more times to even use my ear to jot down what the chord progression might be. It is quite foreign to my ears, and yet I can still follow it. I still understand the gist of what the chords are doing, their roles, where they're going, how it's all playing out in the song, and how it's moving me as the audience through this journey. And the whole song does this on multiple levels. This is a fairly complex rhythmic track as well. Granted, it is mostly centered in 4/4. Every fourth bar is only 3 beats long though, so we have 4/4/4/3, giving us a 15-beat phrase rather than a 16-beat. So we're a beat short of what would be expected. That's a little complex. When you listen to the rhythmic elements from the drums, from the piano, from the guitars, all of it, there is what I would describe to be a fairly genty style of writing here. That simply means that there is a lot of rhythmic syncopation, a lot of playfulness against the backbeat, a lot of focus on polyrhythms, and even polymeters. There's a lot of rhythmic complexity alongside that harmonic complexity I was talking about earlier, and there's even melodic complexity. In the middle of the song, we had quite a bit of counterpoint going on, multiple piano and keyboard lines all stacked up on each other, individual, unique melodies going off simultaneously. And yet, despite complexity in all three core aspects of music writing, melody, harmony, and rhythm, it's quite listenable, honestly. It's enjoyable, and where this type of music sometimes can be a bit difficult for me to understand and digest, I got a general vibe out of this one. I was able to follow along, and I'm pretty sure Tigran has even written music that rhythmically was beyond me, where I lost counts. I couldn't figure out the time signature, I couldn't find one, and yet I could keep up with this track. To me, this is all of these layers of complexity being handled in a way that's still digestible. And I think that's where this song really excels. Tigran has a fantastic way of creating this palatable complexity. I'm pretty sure every song I've heard from him has, I would think, a mainstream audience for it. Mainstream-ish, possibly. I think everything I've heard from him is metal adjacent. So I think if you enjoy metal sounds, probably more of an audience for him. But what I'm saying is you don't need a music degree to enjoy his work. And I think this is just taking all of that writing style, mixing the complexity with the ability to just feel it, to understand it, and finding something that walks that line fantastically well, where sometimes I do think his writing dips a little too far into the complexity side of things. This song focuses a lot on layers, too. The middle of the song gets incredibly dense, and I actually found that to be a fantastic point of the track. I had mentioned that I kind of got an emotional element to this song. There's some mystery at the beginning, kind of don't know where things are going. Eventually we start stacking layers up, it becomes dense, and I recall mentioning something about it being a bit spooky. It's a really good October pick, except it's not quite October yet, is it? Oh, no, it is. Today's the 1st. Okay. Well, it's a good October pick then. And next week we have Sinister Tones theme coming through. I don't know if this quite qualifies as sinister, but it definitely goes in that direction. Things lighten up though. And then they get heavy again. And this time we bring in a lot of layers. This is where all of the counterpoint comes in, and we end up seeing some harmonic instability. That meaning that with all of the melodies going off, there are going to be certain beats where the notes that all the melodies are playing, some of the notes are clashing with each other. In fact, I think in particular, the lowest piano melody, because there's a lot of synth work going on in here, but lowest in pitch piano melody is the one that seems to be intentionally clashing with the notes around them, creating a lot of dissonance. What I found really interesting about this is that it feels like a spice. If you listen to the melodies that are louder, higher in pitch, more likely for your attention to focus on them, there's a lot of consonance going on, a beautiful dance between all of these melodies. It's just this one quieter piano at the bottom that's being a bit disruptive. What I found interesting was one section or two sections later, we entered into sort of a mathcore idea where we had some lower notes on some sort of staccato rhythm, and then we would contrast that with 3 or 4 higher chords. Now these were technically dyads, 2-note chords, and they were incredibly tense, very dissonant. Not quite as dissonant as mathcore can get, which I think mathcore tends to use half-step intervals and a lot of amplification to really drive home the distortion of this dyad without the compression. And I think that this isn't a half-step dyad, which is the most tense, the least stable you could get, which is just the 2 closest notes on a keyboard. So the white, pick any white key and pick the black key that sits next to it, play them at the same time. It's going to be incredibly tense and dissonant. And that's what a lot of like mathcore and post-hardcore really tense dyads are based on. I don't think this is that, but it is an unstable chord. There is dissonance in it. And we have this dun 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 dun, ding ding ding, dun dun dun, something along those lines, some sort of rhythmic idea on a low tone, and then jumping up to these higher pitched dyads. This is straight up a mathcore idea. It's really interesting to hear it on piano, though. But we started off with introducing this idea of tension, of dissonance underneath all this music, and then brought it to the forefront in the core riff, in that core ostinato that's being played here. Ostinato is just a really good word. It's like a guitar riff, but a classical term for it. And then from here, we introduce the core melody, the whistled melody on top of the piano, kind of bring things back down. We reduce some of the layers. We bring the drums back, the very light steel brushes scraping along the snare. It's more compressed though, kind of bring the layers down. A nice way to sort of wrap the song up here. We do end up bringing the intensity back for a nice punchy ending, but it never brings back the dissonance. And the song to me is mysterious, playful, and then spooky, tense, ominous, even before all of that sort of vaporizing a little bit and just returning back to the mystery of it all. Coming back to a lighter, I don't know, more family-friendly spookiness rather than some of the intensity we had in the middle of the track. And generally speaking, I love this whole idea. I mean, the thoughts of a curse, blood of an innocent is spilled. Yeah, curses aren't good, man. I think the song does a good job of creating a sound that is antagonistic of sorts, something that seems like it would not have your best interests in mind. And towards the middle of the track, we can really find some tense moments. Now, what's interesting is the ending. I don't necessarily know how to wrap that up with the idea of a curse unless the curse is now satisfied with whatever it did in the middle of the track with all of that tension and dissonance, and now it's gone-ish maybe, or satisfied for a moment possibly. But the concept of a curse, of an innocent person being killed, possibly that induced the curse, or maybe as a response or what is it, an effect of the curse, that's never a good thing either. I think this song does a great job of capturing this whole sort of spooky concept, both in traditional spooky vibes and in more exploratory genre fusion concepts. And it stays light and elegant rhythmically, while harmonically moving into these dense soundscapes, introducing and combining these influences from different places and creating something that is, one, very clearly pop culture style spooky music, but also, two, something unique and fresh. I can't say that I've heard these specific ideas, even just the chord progressions within a spooky context before. This is a very cool idea of saying, this is the key atmosphere we want. We definitely want people to understand it. So we need to lean into pop culture sounds, but we also need to mix that with this vast understanding of harmony and chords and melodies that Hamasyan brings to the table. I don't know why my tongue wasn't cooperating. And mixing all of this together, and once again bringing something that ends up feeling very palatable and understandable while also being fresh and unique. And honestly, that's where he excels. And I think this is one of the best songs I've heard from him in that realm of walking that line between I cannot think, dude. This music has rendered my brain worthless. Between complexity and understandability and digestibility. And there are no lyrics to this track, were there? I guess this wraps it up then. These are my thoughts on Tigran Hamasyan's The Curse, Blood of an Innocent is Spilled. What did you think of this track? Did anything stand out to you? Is there anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own thoughts, perspectives, or opinion on this. What is your takeaway from a sort of narrative perspective here? Put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.